Okay, so today we're doing a deep dive into something, well, pretty fundamental. The question is, what's actually real?
Yeah, it seems like such a simple question at first.
Right, but we've got this perspective from Deepak Chopra, shared by one of you listeners, that really, it takes things way beyond, our everyday assumptions.
And that's the plan for this discussion, really.
Yeah.
To sort of unpack that view presented in the source. We'll start with, reality is solid stuff, matter.
The common sense view, what we touch and see.
Exactly. Then follow where science leads when it looks closer and closer. Digs deeper into that matter.
Down the rabbit hole.
And then we'll kind of pivot.
Yeah.
Look at it all from a completely different angle, consciousness, subjective experience.
And try to see how it all connects.
Yeah, look for those connections and what it all might mean for you and your own potential.
Yeah.
We're sticking just to the ideas presented in this material.
Sounds good. So where does this perspective start us off?
Well, it begins right where you'd expect. The simplest definition. Like from a dictionary. Reality is that which exists. Simple as that.
Right. Things like, this rock, my hand, the glass I'm holding.
Your glasses, yeah. Clouds in the sky. A rainbow even.
These are things we perceive as being.
Yeah.
They're existing. That's our sort of default reality, the physical world, matter.
And that's a totally understandable starting point. I mean, it's our direct experience.
And science starts there too, right? By looking at this material world.
Absolutely. It begins by observing, measuring, analyzing this stuff that seems so solid and real.
But, okay, science never just stops at the surface, does it? It asks, what is this stuff, this matter, actually made of?
Exactly. The source uses the example of water. We all experience water as real. It's definitely matter.
Solid, liquid, gas.
And science tells us, okay, water is H2O. It's made of molecules.
Which are combinations of atoms, hydrogen and oxygen.
Right. And that principle, that things are made of smaller things, applies across the board to everything material.
Your chair, the planet, distant stars, it's all molecules and atoms.
Fundamentally, yes. At that level, molecules are made of atoms. That's the next step down.
And then science keeps asking, okay, what are atoms made of?
And we go deeper again into the subatomic world. Atoms are made up of particles, electrons orbiting a nucleus.
Which has protons and neutrons inside.
Precisely. And we know about their charges, their locations within the atom, all that.
But the journey described in the source, it goes further still, doesn't it? Even those particles, protons, neutrons, they aren't the end of the line.
No, they're not. Experiments like in those huge hadron colliders show they're made of even smaller things. Quarks, for example.
Held together by other particles like gluons, it just keeps going smaller and smaller.
It really is a rabbit hole, yeah. Breaking matter down, down, down.
So what's the big takeaway from science going down this path, according to the source?
The key scientific conclusion presented here is that when you get right down to it, these fundamental particles, they aren't just tiny solid bits. They have this dual nature.
Dual nature.
Yeah. They act as both mass and energy. That famous equation, NSEA, touches on this relationship.
Ah, right. So solid-seeming matter, when you get down to its absolute basics, it sort of dissolves into energy and information.
That's the picture painted in the source, yes. And this understanding isn't just theory. It's the basis for, pretty much all our modern technology. The fact that you can listen to this right now depends on manipulating energy and information at fundamental levels.
Okay, wow. So we've gone from solid stuff to molecules, atoms, particles, and now to energy and information. But the source then pushes further, right? It asks.
Where does that come from?
Exactly. Where does all this fundamental energy and information originate?
And the answer given in this material is the quantum vacuum.
The quantum vacuum. Okay, what is that according to this source?
So it's described as the ultimate wellspring, the source of literally all energy and matter in the entire universe.
Wow. All of it.
All of it. But it's not empty space like we normally think. The source depicts it as buzzing with activity, with something called virtual particles.
Virtual, like potential particles, not quite real yet.
Kinda, yeah. The source describes them as the potential for energy and particles. They flicker in and out of existence, representing possibilities.
And these then become actual real energy and particles.
That's the idea presented. These virtual potentials sort of crystallize into the actual energy and particles that then combine to form atoms, molecules, and eventually everything physical. Rocks, trees, galaxies.
So our bodies, dolphins, rabbits, everything.
Everything material traces back to this. But crucially, the source points out, this quantum vacuum isn't something we can, perceive directly.
Can't see it or touch it.
No. It's described more as a hypothetical mathematical construct. It's invisible, immaterial, an emptiness or void in terms of physical substance.
But it's not nothing.
Right. It's the potential for everything, the potential for energy, information, and matter.
So that's kind of mind-bending.
Right.
The scientific path, as laid out here, leads us from the solid, tangible world right down to a source that is fundamentally not physical.
Exactly. The essential nature of the physical world turns out to be non-physical. The material world isn't ultimately material.
It's a total paradox for our everyday minds. There's that Rumi quote the source uses.
We come spinning out of nothingness, scattering stars like dust.
Yeah. That nothingness isn't empty, it's the source itself.
The wound of creation, as the source puts it. This immeasurable potential for everything that exists.
Well, why is it so hard to wrap our heads around?
Well, think about it. It's described as being formless, timeless, spaceless.
Outside of space and time.
Completely.
Yeah.
And our entire normal experience, everything we perceive and think about, happens within space and time. How do you conceptualize something that has no location and exists outside of time?
I guess you can't, not directly.
The source suggests it's really only approachable through abstract concepts, mathematics like zero or infinity.
And it has other qualities mentioned, like being interconnected.
Yeah, the source mentions it being infinitely correlated, hinting at that non-local connection we see in quantum entanglement, where things are linked regardless of distance. And also spontaneously creative, constantly evolving.
So this source, this potential, is eternal, timeless.
Mm-hmm. While everything that comes out of it, all physical existence, is temporary, it's transient, it changes.
It has a beginning, a middle, and end. A shelf life, as the source says.
Right. Rocks last ages, trees less, our bodies even less. Even fundamental particles have lifetimes.
Yeah.
Physical existence is impermanent. The forms always change.
Okay. So science traces matter down to this immaterial, timeless potential. Got it. But then the source makes a really big shift. It asks, does this model explain everything?
Right. Does it?
Specifically, where does our mind, our experience of all this come from?
Ah, yes. This brings us to what the source calls the hard problem of consciousness.
The hard problem.
Meaning, how does all this physical stuff, atoms, molecules, electrical signals in the brain, force fields, how does that create subjective experience?
Like the feeling of seeing red, or the sting of sadness, or just the sense of being here.
Exactly. Thoughts, feelings, imagination, qualia. The raw field experience. The source argues that the scientific model, amazing as it is for building technology and explaining how things work physically, doesn't actually solve this fundamental mystery. How does matter generate mind?
And the source suggests that maybe we're looking at it the wrong way. That reality isn't just about the stuff out there, but it's deeply tied to our experience.
Precisely. And that experience is not one size fits all. It's species specific.
Oh, right, the butterfly example.
Yeah, the painted lady butterfly.
Mm.
I mean, just imagine its world. It tastes with its feet.
Wow.
It smells with its antenna, hears with its wings, sees through, 30,000 lenses. Its reality must be utterly different from ours.
So our reality is just the human version of experience.
That's the point the source makes. It's our species' way of experiencing.
Okay, so this leads the source to suggest shifting our whole perspective. Instead of starting with external objects, start with internal experiences.
All right, take that glass of water again. Before you label it glass of water.
Yep.
What is it, really?
It's something I see, feel, maybe taste.
It's an experience happening inside you, happening in your consciousness, even your own body.
Did I experience, feel?
So what is that experience made of, according to this view?
Sensations, you mean?
Exactly. Colors, shapes, forms, sounds, tastes, smells, textures. All perceptions.
And the label, glass of water, or my hand, or that tree,
is a human construct. It's a mental label, a story we attach to bundle those fluctuating sensations together.
The source argues we don't actually experience a solid, independent physical world directly.
We experience our perceptions.
We experience our sensory perceptions, which are constantly changing, and physical objects, including our own bodies, are kind of like mental models we build to make sense of these fluctuating experiences within our own consciousness.
Wow. Okay. And then the source goes even deeper with this idea of consciousness.
It does. It says, okay, look at these perceptions, these experiences. Where do they happen? Well, in me. In my awareness.
Right. They arise in awareness. They are known by awareness. They eventually disappear back into awareness.
Okay.
And here's the kicker. The source says they're actually made out of awareness, consciousness itself.
Made of awareness. How does that work?
The source uses that metaphor from Rupert Spira.
Mm-hmm.
Think of awareness as a movie screen. It's silent, clear, formless,
Uh-huh.
experiences sights, sounds, thoughts, feelings, or like the pictures playing on the screen. They appear on the screen, they are made of the screen's light, but the screen itself doesn't take on the form or color of the pictures.
So the experiences are like modifications of a screen, modifications of awareness.
That's exactly the idea. Sound isn't just out there, it's consciousness modifying itself into the experience of sound. Color is a modified quality of consciousness.
Taste, texture, thought, all of it.
All experience, from this perspective, is awareness constantly modifying itself, shape-shifting into these perceptual experiences.
And then our human minds add labels and stories.
Right. Interpretations, context, meaning, purpose, which are also fundamentally just more thoughts, more fluctuations within that same consciousness.
Okay, so if everything is a modification of awareness, what is this awareness itself? What's its nature?
The source says it's infinite
Infinite. Why infinite?
because it's formless. Think about it. If awareness had a shape or a boundary, that shape or boundary would be something you could perceive.
An experience within awareness.
Exactly, not the awareness itself. So because it's formless, it has no limits, no location, it's non-local.
Like the quantum vacuum outside of space and time.
Yes, it doesn't exist in space or time, which is why, again, our usual ways of thinking, which are totally based on space and time, just can't really grasp it directly.
So putting it all together, mind, body, the world we see, it's all just consciousness modifying itself, appearing as forms and experiences.
That's the core insight presented here. If you trace any experience, the sight of a tree, the feeling of warmth, a thought, trace it back to its source, you don't find matter. You find consciousness.
And what does that mean for, well, for me, for you, the listener?
The implication is pretty staggering. It means that fundamentally, the awareness reading these words, having these thoughts, you are that infinite formless consciousness.
And all my experiences
My life, my body.
are finite, temporary, transient fluctuations of your own infinite being. They arise, they change, they pass. Like waves on an ocean. You can't grab hold of a wave itself, only the water moving. The experiences are ungraspable because they are movements of consciousness.
That idea of things being transient, it really connects to the feeling of life being like a dream, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
The source talks about this.
It does. Think about your childhood memories, or even what you did yesterday, or 5 minutes ago.
It feels distant,
Yeah.
dreamlike, yeah.
The source puts it starkly. The past is a dream. The future is a dream we imagine. And the present moment, it's like a lucid dream.
Lucid how?
In the sense that it's happening now, this constant, incessant activity of consciousness modifying itself into experience moment by moment by moment. It quotes Wittgenstein.
We are asleep. Our life is a dream.
Oh.
Right. And the Buddha's reflections on life being as transient as autumn clouds or a flash of lightning, impermanent.
So this really undermines the idea of solid, separate things existing out there independently again. Molecules, atoms, particles.
According to the source, these are brilliant human constructs for modes of knowing and experience in human consciousness. They're incredibly useful labels and models.
But maybe not the ultimate reality, like magical lies we tell ourselves to categorize experience.
That's one way to put the source's perspective. We saw how tracing matter down scientifically leads to nothingness, the potential of the quantum vacuum. This perspective says tracing experience inward also leads to nothingness, the formless potential of pure consciousness.
It connects back to older wisdom traditions too, right? The Upanishads?
Yes, the source mentions them, and the Bhagavad Gita, that idea from Krishna. Curving back within myself I create again and again. The infinite I, the formless awareness, turning within itself to generate the experience of mind, body, and world.
Like the Rumi quote about small eyes seeing enormous things.
How do I fathom the entire universe? And the answer implied is, because you're not small. You are the infinite consciousness that contains the universe as an experience.
Okay. So, boiling it down from this viewpoint, you are the dreamer, not the dream. The seer, not the scenery. The awareness, not the object of awareness.
What we perceive as reality out there is fundamentally a modification, a fluctuation of your own infinite consciousness.
And you mentioned earlier the source points out similarities between the quantum vacuum and this pure consciousness.
It does. Those qualities of being the source of all potential, formless, timeless, infinitely correlated, spontaneously creative.
Yeah.
They seem to map onto each other in this perspective.
Which brings us to manifestation, conscious creation.
It does. The source notes that reality at the quantum level seems unpredictable, which leaves room for possibility, for novelty, not just clockwork determinism.
Uh-huh.
And it identifies this fundamental reality, this consciousness, as the source of attention and intention. Where you place your attention determines your experience. Being aware of something makes it exist for you.
So if reality is potential, and it's created by consciousness modifying itself,
Then realizing that consciousness opens up a radical possibility. The source suggests we're mostly unconscious creators, just playing out patterns.
but we could become conscious creators.
Yes, shapeshifters, cosmic alchemists, the source calls it. The idea is that manifestation isn't about forcing the external world to change, but about accessing that source level, the state of pure consciousness, and setting intentions from there. Changing the dreamer to change the dream.
Wow. Okay, so just to recap this whole journey, we started with reality as solid, everyday stuff. We followed science down, down, down until matter basically dissolved into immaterial potential, the quantum vacuum.
Right, a sort of nothingness that's the source of everything.
And then we flipped the perspective entirely, looking at reality not as objects, but as experience happening within consciousness.
And saw that, from this viewpoint, all experience mind-body world is consciousness modifying itself. A transient flow.
Which is a, massive shift from just thinking about the chair you're sitting on as just a chair.
It definitely challenges our deepest assumptions. The core takeaway, really, from this material we've explored is that reality isn't presented as some fixed objective thing out there.
It's more like
a dynamic, constantly changing dream of experience, generated by a fundamental, formless, infinite consciousness, which, the source suggests, is ultimately what you are.
And the point isn't just abstract philosophy. The source suggests this understanding has real implications.
It absolutely does. It changes how you might see your own life, your limitations, your potential.
So maybe the final thought to leave everyone with, based on this deep dive.
If your reality, at its very root, is this dreamlike play of consciousness,
Yeah.
what does that truly open up? What possibilities emerge if you think about shaping your experience, not just by rearranging the furniture in the dream, but by shifting the state of the dreamer, your own consciousness itself?